This is so why. Ugh. This is ridiculous. All right, I'm gonna try it again. Sorry, guys. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, we're live. It happened. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Over Your New Year. So sorry about all that, guys. Apparently, the curse has returned. So just like the other day, I'm talking to you from my phone and not on my computer. So we'll see if what happened the other time with Tina, when we talked about Jinjito happens again, where I'm panicking at the end because I can't end the stream. So we'll see. I have two special guests. One is a new face. One is an older face. That's what the best way to say that. Jacob, welcome to the stream.
Hi, how you
Happy
doing?
to have you. And welcome to Lee.
Hello.
Here he goes. He's got it.
He's got it. So both of you were big Hellboy fans. Both of you separately were like, hey, we should do this for Over Your New Reader. And I was like, this is great. I'll have both of you join. And also perfect because you both have such great accents that I think it just adds to talking about the book personally.
Oh.
Not that that matters, but I think it adds to the ambiance personally. So Jacob, you're a new face here.
Yeah. Hi.
What's your comic book background? What kind of reading? What kind of comic book reading you do?
I'm probably not as well read as some. I'll admit it. But I have read the classics as I view them. But since they're the only ones I've read, it's a pretty narrow thing to draw from.
Yeah.
But I've read, the classics, the ones that they say you should read, but haven't really dove into like the big two at all.
That's fine.
So I've read everything else. Maybe.
There's nothing wrong with that. So
No.
the classics, like I assume, like Watchmen.
Oh yeah.
Okay, people say classics. I'm like, that's the one, right? That's the classic.
Yeah. Yeah, and Mouse, Preacher, Sandman, a lot of Hellboy and related, Chew.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Yeah, Bone.
Saga?
What?
Saga?
Yes.
Oh, see, then you're good.
Okay.
You've read what people might consider like the fine dining of comics. I feel like you know what I mean.
I'm so hip and trendy.
You're so hip and trendy. That's
to
good.
the bare minimum standard of like all medium. Just so I can have a conversation, hopefully, with whoever I'm talking to, and appear knowledgeable without being knowledgeable.
Perfect. And Lee, welcome back. Old reader, new reader. You and I have had many discussions. So we're talking about Hellboy the Crooked Man. So I've only read you both of you have read a lot more Hellboy than I have. I think the only other time I've read Hellboy is probably with you on the stream, Lee.
Yeah. We did BPRD Vampire, I think, and we did either the 40s or the 50s for Hellboy. I think the 40s.
Not sure. Some of it. So the Crooked Man came up because the movie we knew this is suggested because one, it's October, perfect time for Hellboy comic. Two, the movie was coming out at that time. We did, unfortunately, because we were excited, like, oh, we'll all go see the movie together. They did not release it in theaters in the US. So maybe some of you are watching from other countries, you got to go see it in theaters. It was a straight to like digital physical release, like just straight to it. So we did get together, the three of us, and watch that. So we prepped for this. And we can talk about that a little bit more later. And this is just a short story. So Jacob was kind enough to let me borrow, and I would hold it up for you, but it's propping up my phone because again, stream is scuffed today. That's a new word I learned from VTubers. Scuffed. I did not know that word. Yeah, so it's like we always use that word if like something goes wrong with their stream. Then it's like, oh, the stream is scuffed. So the youth, some of the youth, I say youth, I think it's people our age still that are VTubing and saying those things, but I'm hip.
Okay.
So he was kind of telling me The Crooked Man and others. And The Crooked Man, I don't know if it came on issues or just like was like just its own short story.
It was a limited run. It was like a little arc when it came out. I don't know how many issues there was, but it was a limited run. It actually won the Eisner.
I did see that.
For best limited run.
So Jacob, the Eisner is our comic book award.
Yes.
I mean, I guess it's easy put together that would win an award that was for comics, but it's like the award, the award.
Yeah, because Eisner, I know that name. He did The Spirit and some other stuff.
Yeah, and I think he was a Disney animator for some time. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
So normally in this show we do like a little like brief kind of summary. This isn't very long, so we kind of just go in order. Really, we don't even have to like go play by play. But basically, this story is set in West Virginia or just Appalachia.
Virginia,
not West Virginia. So it's set in Virginia, but in Appalachia. And I read the foreword in this as well, where he talked about how even though he's had a lot of background with Appalachian, a lot of interest in Appalachian stories, this is like the first time he's really set a Hellboy story in there, because I guess typically Hellboy doesn't go to the U.S. And we deal with some kind of like some witches and some cool like devilry, if you will, but not devilry in the sense that you would think of the devil almost like you would think of Hellboy. Very kind of southern folk kind of like magic and storytelling. So and he ends up connecting with a guy who goes with him who was from this area that was there like 20 years ago. So that man is also dealing with his own demons, as it were, as he comes back to see what has happened to his family in this time and what's happened with him and this relationship he had when he was younger. So I guess we could just dig in. It's a pretty casual show. I really dug this. I liked because the art isn't Mignola, it's another guy. So I wasn't sure when I started it, but I really like Corben. It.
Yeah.
I like the rawness of it a lot. I think that added to like the characterization of everyone. Like they felt very real. They felt very Appalachian weirdly. Like I saw that art and I was like, yes, this fits the dialogue.
There's a little bit of roughness that is not in Mignola's like very clean stuff. That is very cool. There was an interview with Mignola where he was talking about the art, and he has written Hellboy stories with the intention of drawing them himself, and then got to some panel and he's like, I'll never make this like this weird posture of an attack look good, so I'm just going to give up. And I think this is probably an example of that, because there's some really wild stuff in some of these panels, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I read it like just before we watched the movie. So
I read it in the Big Felt Library Edition, because that's the version I have.
Because he's fancy
to have in the house. In the appendices of the Library Edition, there is a like afterword and a series of sketches by Richard Corben, the artist, and in one of the pieces, Mignola writes that no one can do the gritty, dirty leaves and shrubbery like Corben. And then Corben says in the sketches that he actually was really nervous about drawing Hellboy, the character himself, because he didn't think anyone could do it as well as Mignola does it, right?
Yeah.
And for me, the way Corben draws Hellboy here is actually really interesting. He plays with proportion and perspective with Hellboy. Hellboy, look, and so I'm not saying this in a derogatory way. I like this aesthetic. Hellboy
Yeah.
looks like he is made out of Coke cans. He looks like he has been
Yeah.
sculpted out of like stone or metal cylinders. He doesn't have the sort of dramatic, jagged angles that he usually has. Literally, his head looks like a tube with like
Mm-hmm.
features like slightly protruding off of it. It's an interesting way to do it. He looks like he is like sculpted out of clay, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's great because like for like a lot of levels, because like I think the character design of everyone is really interesting. Like just the kind of like slack jawed look some people have. And it works really well too, because early on we're introduced to Effie, right? Who is
Mm.
the witch that our local that Hellboy is traveling with is a witch that he met when he was younger, who I guess seduced him into thinking that he also wanted to get into witchcraft. And what's great about her is that she's drawn to be like this kind of like sexy nymph or whatever, but what's different is that she's got this like crazed face. So even with the art as well, like
Yeah.
she kind of just she's sexy or she's nymph like for Appalachia, which is perfect. The sort of like, oh brother, where art thou? Like her face is kind of crazy. She's just wearing like a kind of rags kind of like dress.
Yeah.
Her hair it looks kind of straw like, and it fits great. And like the more we meet other characters, each of them like that style gives them so much characterization without even us having to like spend much time with them.
Yeah.
And then I also want to talk like the I guess more grotesque parts. I really enjoy as well because early on we have it was great actually. I'm glad I watched the movie first and then watched this weirdly, because it helped me. Because the movie I felt like it was hard for me to follow a lot because it moved. The pacing was a little odd, and this was so easy to follow. But it was nice to like know what's coming, so I could kind of spend more time looking at the art and looking at everything comes together. But even early on, he goes to find his old friend Cora. And we go to Cora's house, we just find this like sack of skin, as if she's been like deflated. And I love the way that was drawn here and like filled out. And that's one thing I'll give props to the movie for, because I feel like that was like the effects on that was really
one of the
good.
better sequences. Yeah,
it was one of the better sequences. The effects I think were very good in the movie. Honestly, I think those really did a great job of like enhancing what was shown in here. Because that part was really cool to see like slowly like fill out, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
The sequence with the raccoon is also just very, very good. So in Appalachia, in Appalachian folktales, as well as in Mignola's like lexicon, witchcraft and sort of evil in general is really closely tied to like lesser critters, frogs, bugs, snakes, rodents, bats. And that comes through a lot here in the form that when I say the raccoon sequence, if you haven't actually read this, whenever the witch goes out into the world and comes back to fill in her skin, she comes back in the form of a raccoon because she's a skin changer, right? If this sounds something familiar, like something out of Harrow County, it's because these types of stories are actually from Appalachian folktales. Mignola consulted books on Appalachian folktales to
Shout out to Lee's
write this.
cryptid podcast.
Now defunct, but yeah.
Now defunct, but former cryptid podcast.
Yeah. So no one on Earth uses or draws weird little critters the way Mignola uses them, and the way artists that he contracts to do the Hellboy series use them, right?
I didn't realize Richard Corben passed away. Sorry.
No, you're good. I didn't know that either, actually.
I had to restart my computer so I could select comments again. So that's why I was kind of looking wide. It was continue.
And I think that's one of the strongest parts of the book is the theme of like mean creatures and critters. I use mean in the term of like low, right? Lesser creatures of the night. The type of creatures that like Renfield would eat to give himself powers, right?
Yeah.
And using those is a tried and true Mignola tactic. And then when they do the sequence of like a raccoon crawling into a deflated sack of human skin to refill it out, it works really well for like a creepiness factor and an authenticity factor that this book needs to draw from, because neither of the creators really have much of a connection to the region or whatever. And to be honest, there are places in the book where some of the caricatures of the way people from here talk and behave start to border on insulting. To say nothing of the movie, where the portrayal of people in the region is just straight up insulting, right?
So what do you guys think about the segment in the comic where it's just like, stop the action, here's the old granny witch gonna explain what's happening? Like, it's a giant asterisk of lore dump. What do you guys make of that?
I dig it, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I love that fourth wall breaking. Yeah. Like,
sorry.
I appreciate a fourth wall breaking moment. And yeah, I think when it's first of all, artistically it looks cool. Yeah, it's just a fun little break. Especially when you have characters that aren't very talkative, because I don't see Hellboy or what is his name, Tommy? The other guy? Yeah. Tom. Yeah. I don't see Hellboy or Tom getting really in depth about any of this. And it would make sense for them to. No. So it was great for them to be like, now let me tell you. All right, yeah, let's go.
It's also used really well in the narrative, in my opinion, because it's actually used. It's a character using it to distract themselves from like the horribleness of what is happening. It's while they're being attacked by the zombies and the witch devils and all the evil creatures in the church. And it's literally like, you don't want to think about all this unpleasantness right now. So why don't we have an anthropology lesson on how one makes a witch ball?
Right.
Yeah. It's very well done.
And it's just a nice break in the story, and it's also like a little experimental in the flow on the page, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And you feel like it's an ad for a moment. To sell your soul to the devil, I guess.
Which honestly, I think that'd be a great ad to have in here, personally. So let's start with the Crooked Man. So we are first the character. So he's first introduced to us like when they have this great moment, which I really appreciate. I love this back and forth. I'm afraid I want to highlight you, but I'm afraid if I do it, that it won't go away. So I'm gonna be very quick, okay? Because there's a non-zero chance I highlight you and my computer freezes. But it's this really good moment back and forth with them, because where he's like, well, I've seen you in that ad and like the cover page, but you're just a little red thing, but I've seen a devil and you're not a devil, because the devil can't go into a church. And then he describes the Crooked Man when he goes through this whole thing with Effie, finds this like run over cat, smush cat, and boils so he has the bones, and then whichever bone he has when the devil shows up is his lucky one. And the devil for him is the Crooked Man. And I love that, because one, I love the way he's portrayed in this. I think he looks very neat, and it makes sense for like a southern setting for the devil to kind of look like that. It's kind of just rickety. Yeah. Just like an old man that's just like, well, I see you got one, like he's just sort of like creeping around. Oh, meme this,
Like his hat's busted, his coat's all torn, but he's still wearing all of this stuff. Has this like used to be important. Now what is he sunk to? And he's going to drag you down with him to make himself feel a little better. Of course, it's never enough. he's the crooked man. Classic villain setup, and then he's just mean.
The perfect Jacob villain.
Yeah, he's great.
For people at home, Jacob has DM'd for me a couple of times. A system called Morkborg, tabletop RPG, kind of like Dungeons and Dragons for the non-nerds, which there shouldn't be any here. But him in the movie and reading this, I was like, oh man, I want to hear Jacob just like read all these lines out loud.
Yeah. I had to announce, I am Fletcher, the cannibal warlock. This is why I do what I do, because this is what I am. Because I couldn't, there's no way to give the exposition of who this guy is in the story. But,
which I love.
Yeah, I like the Crooked Man a lot.
Yeah, so what's interesting about the selection of the Crooked Man is, to my knowledge, the Crooked Man is not a myth that generates from the region. The earliest sort of instance I can think of the Crooked Man, it's actually a British nursery rhyme. I think the second Conjuring movie uses it.
Huh.
There was a crooked man who walked a crooked mile with a crooked cane and a crooked smile. Right, so it's an old British nursery rhyme, is the oldest one I can think of. I don't think it's indigenous to this area. But what's interesting is the way Mignola sort of takes the idea and frames it, right? So the Crooked Man, I think his real name was Wilkins. And the idea is he is this old money swindler. He lives in a freaky mansion in a freaky part of the mountain. And there's a reference to a backstory. Like, he was the first white man who set foot in this part of the country. He was behind all of the trouble between settlers and native peoples. He played both sides during the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, and he was always trying to swindle people and trick people so he could amass increasing amounts of wealth. And then when he died, because of his legendary greed, the devil makes him in charge of swindling people for their souls, which is how Tommy ends up meeting him. Tommy ends up accidentally trading him for his soul, right? So Mignola sort of takes this fairy tale, this nursery rhyme, turns it on its head and makes it a critique of specifically what is actually ailing the region. And this is textual. This isn't me coming in retroactively and applying some sort of liberal arts education to it. Right? What Mignola is doing on purpose is making a commentary about the forces that have made life in Appalachia hard. Why do these people wear burlap sacks? Why do they have no shoes? Why are their floors dirt floors? Why do none of them have an education? It's because they've been swindled out of it by people with money and people with power, and that is a monstrous thing. So we represent this theme with a monstrous individual, right?
Preach about
it. Which suits it, because listening to both of you, I think that it works so well with the way he's put together. Like, I really liked what Jacob said about, you can see, it's like you can still see the finery as if he had it and he died, but he just didn't let go of any of it. It just got dustier. It's basically, it's like he still has all this stuff that was really nice in his day, but now it's just dusty. It's molded. But he's still holding on to it. He's molded too. I think it's a very interesting villain. And at the same time, we've got Effie and we've got the witches, which I also liked as well to kind of see, because the Crooked Man kind of teaming together with the witches, and more of them are showing up according to the priest. And there's less just townspeople, but they can't enter anywhere near the church because it's hallowed ground. But I love it the way that they all show up together, but they don't really do anything right away. It's almost like they just kind of stand there, just like testaments, just watching the place, almost kind of zombie-like, until they spend time looking at the graves. I'm like, basically, they don't say it like this, but basically, this bitch shouldn't be buried here.
Yeah.
You know what this person did? Why are they buried here at this church?
But
like,
then
this
it's like
person
they're
did this,
witches, and it's just like, oh, that person didn't pay their taxes. And they've like sold their soul, but like that's enough for them to find the loophole in the hallowed ground rules.
Which I love, because they have like a higher ones, right? Because like, oh, this guy's bad, this guy just didn't pay his taxes. And you're like, okay, I think we're reaching now, which is, I see what you're doing, but so good. I love the priest. I really love. Yeah. They eventually make it to this church to kind of hide out, make their next plan, and they run into his priest there. He's blind, but he's still in the church, even though obviously I don't think anybody else is even going to there. Like, I don't even know if he has any people actually attending church. It kind of sounds like maybe he doesn't. Definitely he's just not. Like, he's just holding on to it. It's decrepit. It's falling down. Yeah. And a moment that I thought was also good in the movie, but was also good in here, is when the devil tries to barter with him. Because at this point, Hellboy opens up the door, gets like tons of knives, and he's like, "Oh shit," which I love. He's just like, "Oh no," yeah. And then the devil's like, "Oh well, you can sell me, Tommy. I can pay for this church." All his gold shows up, and he's like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And it's like, "What if I give you your sight back?" "Oh well, you can enjoy it, right? So let's make you younger. How about 10? How about 20? How about 30 years?" And I love that back and forth with him. Because he says no, and then all these horrors start to happen where they're trying to tempt him with, like, the witch is like, "Oh well, you loved young girls, right? You like trying to get," which is interesting because they don't clarify either way if he's been always good or not. But he sees all these horrors, he's like, "God, please take my sight away again."
Yeah,
I don't want to see these things. And he's thankful when there's an answer and his sight is gone because it's so horrific to him.
Does he say that he like earned his years and earned his blindness?
Yeah, I come by my afflictions, honestly. Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I earned this decrepit church and this blindness and my poor health and age, and what use would it be to get all it back? And truly, what even if you fix up this church, what do you got here? You think the congregation's going to come back? But, there's a lot of priests in Appalachia who that would be enough. God called on them to buy a jet, A
lot of Catholics in the hills of Western Virginia, are there? Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're all Western Kentucky. That's where I'm from. I don't know why I say it like that. Anyways.
You and every actor in the film.
Oh my gosh, guys! They talk like they were from, like, I think Louisiana sometimes.
There was definitely some Cajun-y Creole type stuff sneaking in.
You know who they talk like? They talk like the two evil cat witches from Scooby-Doo Zombie Island. That's who they talk like. My Lord, I'm gonna have to do some witching around here, boys. It's anyways,
which is too bad because honestly, I love the way all the dialogue was written in here. Like I felt like the accents were like palpable. I really liked it. Reading this now I have like a whole bunch of books I want to bring over to you, Jacob. Because I'm like, now I need you to read Cullen Bunn, because if anyone writes Southern horror well, it's that man. But oh, it's great. It's awesome.
He's not Harlow County, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, then I've got a bunch of those too.
Oh God, Eric Guy's so good.
Yeah.
I want to do a reread of that. But he's got some smaller ones too that I really liked. I think it was like a vampire story. It's like a one-off that I really liked. I'll have to check my unorganized shelves downstairs. So one thing I was a little bummed out about. So towards the end they go to the house, and his way of, I guess, just breaking the pact with the Crooked Man. I was a little confused, I guess. So at the end, he returns the bone to what I assume is the Crooked Man, but he doesn't look like the Crooked Man anymore. I'm not entirely sure how that all went down.
Thing. This is the turn, right? The turn is that the whole time the Crooked Man has been this eldritch monstrosity thing made of tentacles and eyes on stalks and lobster claws. That's what he's been the whole time. And the Crooked Man is an attempt to like make himself presentable. That's how like corrupt he is.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's what he is on the inside. This old moneyed gentleman who's really just trying to help you out by buying something off you don't need. You're not using your soul. Why don't you sell it to him for a few pennies, right?
Mm-hmm.
What he is inside is that disgusting creature, right?
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I love the way that, I mean, I liked how he looked. I was a little sad that it felt a little anticlimactic, but I mean, it felt perfect for the story, but also that was my only like potential, like it was not a true downside because I really like the story regardless, but I wasn't expecting it to end sort of just without fanfare.
So this is a Hellboy thing.
Okay.
This is a Hellboy thing. So so this follows the more traditional Hellboy story plot. Hellboy wanders into a place, encounters a supernatural situation, and then engages in a Dragon Ball Z style fight where he gets his ass just kicked all over the place. And then all of a sudden he rallies and he wins the fight. But the way you win a fight isn't through violence or raw brute strength. It's through intelligence and compassion. So the way to beat the Crooked Man is not the ass whooping he lays down on him with the holy shovel, right? That's a wrestling match. The way you defeat him is through an actually like morally pure act, right? An act of conscience, right?
Yeah.
And that's, throwing the bone back at him after it's been blessed and everything, right? Like,
yeah.
I would like to say that Hellboy often has a very I'm just doing my job kind of thing to him. And whenever he kills a demon or whatever it is, it's often just like, finally, that's over. Maybe I can get back to life as usual. But he's Hellboy, so that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of it reminds me a lot of when I was a plumber, and it's like, now I got this thing and I cut this, so now I have to and then you have to just deal with it. And where Hellboy is getting impaled on wrought iron fences, I might be nicking my thumb. But
it's his primary personality trait. In the books, Hellboy's primary personality trait is like put upon and annoyed that the task of like handling a demon, in your case like fixing a clog in a sink, is getting increasingly complicated, right? I came here to unclog the sink, and now you're telling me I have to dig under the house to look for a like. That's Hellboy's primary personality trait in the comics, is like kind of incredulity at how ridiculous the situations he's put in are.
Yeah. And he is also all the time plagued by people telling him about his potential or what he's supposed to be, or this prophecy or that prophecy, and what path he's going to walk, and what the visions have foretold. And don't you know the lineage? And he's just this put upon guy, which there's a few ways I think the Crooked Man is different from a lot of Hellboy stories, but in that regard, I think that's pretty standard. And shows up in the Crooked Man too.
So, question for you all, as Hellboy fans, for as far as like media that's come out, like live action adaptations of this, we've always had these movies with like big action scenes and things. Do you feel like maybe a show would have done this more justice than big budget movies? Because it sounds almost like if you made more of an anthology show for him where he gets to just have these like,
monster of the week.
Like these sets of stories where it's like, okay, I show by help something like and like kind of a calm, like, all right, I'm done now. I could use a break.
Yeah.
Would be better than having to like, because it seems like maybe they've taken this like, well, we want him to be this, big beat 'em up guy, but that doesn't really suit like the core of what this story is.
And I think you need to animate it. There is an obsession right now in the movie business, especially as it relates to like superheroes and stuff and fantasy, of turning everything into live action. Something isn't real unless it's made live action, right? And I don't buy that at all. And I think in a lot of ways it can actually cheapen things. I think, as much as I love the Del Toro films, right? I think every attempt to sort of turn Hellboy into a live action place, like, falls short because it immediately takes out a key component of what Hellboy is, which is Hellboy is invented by Mignola as an art project. Can I marry Jack Kirby classic schlocky, pulpy comic book style stuff with this gothic stuff that I like? That's why I'm like, half the Hellboy cover art is of Hellboy, who is literally supposed to be like a schlocky EC Comics monster, standing next to a statue of an angel holding a spear that is so perfectly, realistically, and artistically rendered. The entire point of Hellboy is to marry those two things, to marry the dumb, schlocky, beat 'em up, pulpy comic book thing with these sort of lofty ideals. And I think every time I've seen it cut to live action, it actually cheapens it a little bit. Also, no one ever gives Hellboy hooves.
No.
Which is easy, actually. Ask any cosplayer. I can make you hoof feet. That's not. You have to wear heels to do it, but it's not. It's doable.
Yeah, Hellboy's got these weird little hoof things. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Ron Perlman's Hellboy, I remember they almost made it a point to show that his boots were like 4 inches thick in a couple of scenes, which was very odd. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Animated seems like the good choice. I think not everything needs to be live action. I think some people won't watch it if it's animated, but that's their loss. Like if that's where the medium should be, or if that's the medium that tells the story best, then that's what you should go for.
You've seen the animated flicks, right? Storm of Fury and something Blood, Princess of Blood, Queen of Blood.
Yes.
They're very, very good. They made 2 feature-length Hellboy cartoons. It's Ron Perlman, Selma Blair, Doug Jones, and Guillermo del Toro wrote and directed them. And they're actual cartoons where Hellboy and the gang from the BPRD go on. Those, I think, are what the Hellboy films should be like. As a matter of fact, I'd like to see Hellboy get his 3rd film. I'd like to see Guillermo del Toro finish that trilogy and have the 3rd one just be an animated cartoon like those 2.
I think that'd be nice. I mean, as a DC fan, the best DC movies we've got in the past 2 decades have all been the animated ones. Like, consistently, they're good.
Yes.
And then, live action, I cry.
Movies. Yeah.
Oh, great. All of them. They're so much fun. Even Batman Ninja, I don't care. I think it's fun. And everybody else can go for it.
It is, yeah.
There's giant mechs for no reason. That's awesome. You can't, they're not let us do that. Because I think in the movies they get too caught up on what they think audiences want, which to me it just means you don't have faith in your audience, honestly. A lot of times.
This is another one, and I mean, any audience member who's seen me on the show before will know I'm not a prude when it comes to harsh language. It's weird to me that in the last 2 live-action Hellboy movies, Hellboy is dropping constant F-bombs. He says fuck everything all the time. He's yelling fuck constantly. In the comics that Mignola himself wrote, and supposedly the last 2 movies Mignola took a heavier creative hand in because he didn't like the Del Toro movies, Hellboy is cursing like a sailor. And then the comics, the most Hellboy ever says is damn or hell or crap. Like you get very, very little harsh cursing from Hellboy.
I'm pretty sure he says goddamn in here.
Yeah.
In this one.
And that's a rarity, right? That's not super common.
So.
And it feels like a little bit like they insert that for edginess. And my other qualm with it is the way gore is portrayed. Hellboy might kill a troll by cutting its head off. or ripping it in half. And in the book, you will see like sort of artistically rendered, jagged splashes of just red. And then whenever we do these films, they're like gratuitously gory, right? And that doesn't quite fit the artistic style that is with the comics either. And it seems like they're making these films like to please a 14-year-old boy. Even you talked earlier about
that phrasing is scary, but yeah.
You talked earlier about Effie. Effie's character being nymph-like. Did it strike you after watching the film and reading the book how less sexual she is in the book? She makes innuendos. She makes little things. Oh, I rode this horse hard since you left. She makes innuendos like that. But she's far, far, far more sexualized, and to like an embarrassing degree, as if the actress is acting out a softcore porno in the movie, right? And
yeah, they got more
here.
I would say like in the movie, because there's some good points and bad points. I'd say like for her, she's more like what you would see like a B horror movie kind of actress instead of just like whereas she still looked really pretty. But it takes away from like there's a different kind of pretty in the area that I would use, I guess, if that makes sense. Like she's too made up in a way. Like it doesn't feel like a person that would be there.
Yes.
Real quick, I'm afraid to highlight things. I'm afraid I'll get stuck. But I was in Paris last weekend too. Original Mignola Hellboy covers were featured at an exhibit. The inks for Sea of Destruction and for Storm and the Fury. That's awesome.
Ooh.
That's dope.
And James, if I fight you on this, the trolls will come out and they'll get me. But I didn't like the Justice League. Well, I think that the Justice League cut was better than the other one. And that's the only praise I'll give it.
Are we arguing about whether Snyder's better than Whedon? Is that the premise of it?
That's the only one I'll get into. It's not safe for me to do that as a woman on the internet. It's not safe for me to ever talk about Zack Snyder. Anyways, so I really enjoyed this. I think I like the Hellboy world a lot. I really should just take a day and just read through in like order, like because every time I read, I really enjoy the setting a lot.
Yeah. It's so one of the things from the library edition that I had never even known until I reread it 2 days ago for this show is Mignola took really heavy inspiration for this story from a series of novels that I had never heard of before, right? These are the Silver John novels by Manly Wade Wellman.
That's the coolest name I've ever heard.
Manly as a first name?
Yeah.
I'm changing my name. Not mine. If I have a child, I'm naming him Manly.
So Silver John is a wandering Don Quixote, Samurai Jack style character who wanders around Appalachia having adventures which often veer into dark fantasy or horror or even cosmic horror, eldritch.
Ooh.
Right?
That's what I like to hear.
There are a couple that sound very good, and apparently these are big influences both on this story and on Harrow County. And I had never heard of this author, this character, or this series of books until I read it in the bit that Mignola was writing about this. But it kind of fits. But that's who Tom is kind of supposed to be, right? Is that character from those novels? He's like a stand-in for that. But it fits here because that's Hellboy's whole thing. Yes, there's an arc about how he's a demon sent to Earth by the powers that reign in hell to end human civilization. There's a plague of frogs, and Hellboy goes to hell, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff. That is an overarching arc. But the meat of the Hellboy stories is a Monster of the Week format in which Hellboy
which is my favorite.
To a new place and finds a new monster to fight.
More of that. And everything.
Yeah. One of the things about the Crooked Man, you don't need to put Hellboy in this story necessarily. Like you could have the whole siege on the church and everything without Hellboy, and I think it would be a serviceable story. but I think it does give something to the broader scope of Hellboy. I'd also like to say that this is one of the few stories where Hellboy is maybe the more knowledgeable, because a lot of the time he has, some historian who's like, oh, this is from the calendar of the book of the old so and so, and he's like, all right, I'll go fight him. And in this instance, he's the one who's like, oh, witch balls, right? Okay, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's cool for Hellboy.
It is. And Hellboy here is interesting. The point you make is that he's like kind of passive, right? Like Mad Max. The Mad Max movies, most of them, Max stumbles onto a situation that he is not a part of and like plays a supporting role for the heroes, right? The Road Warrior, Thunderdome, and Fury Road all work that way.
Yeah.
Mad Max shows up and other people are doing their thing, and Mad Max kind of participates there. If I'm being a nerd about it, so does Figaro in the Figaro operas. It's largely him as like a Bugs Bunny style cartoon character that's like along for the ride. That's not every Hellboy story, but it works here, and it especially works for Hellboy for its put upon nature, but it also lets the writers do some things for Tom and for the Crooked Man and stuff. Jacob, you mentioned earlier how everyone is constantly bothering Hellboy about his lineage and his destiny. The Crooked Man, it's the first thing he does. As soon as the Crooked Man sees Hellboy, he's like, he immediately drills in on the prophecy and like who Hellboy is. And Hellboy is immediately like, this shit again, I don't care about this nonsense with me being birthed from the bowels of hell and being destined to destroy. I don't care about any of this, right? And then on the other side, Tom shows tremendous humanity towards Hellboy with the simple line, oh no, I've met the devil and he don't look nothing like you, and plus if he was the devil you couldn't set foot in a church, because that's the crux of
such a lovely southern way of approaching anyone. It's just like, nah, I've already seen it, I don't really care about it, and then just like, whatever, man. You seem all right. I got my own things I'm up to right now, so like that, hell yeah. Hell yeah. They don't care.
It helps us really simply get at this thing about what Hellboy is actually about, which is Hellboy is a monster sent to Earth from the Black Realms to destroy us. But he decides, as annoying as it is, and as much headache as it causes him, to help people out, right? Despite being sent here for the singular purpose of destroying us. Like, the guy becomes a civil servant. Hellboy's basically a mailman of the paranormal, right? Like,
get more of that.
Lee, you mentioned Figaro earlier. If I wanted to learn more about opera from somebody like you, is there an opportunity for that?
No. There, you have nothing to learn from opera. So Jacob is looking for like half a conversation he and I had earlier. With my girlfriend Megan, I'm thinking about doing a podcast where we watch operas and comment on them, because she has a PhD in the subject and has performed in operas around the earth. And I know less about opera than I know about, let's say, microbiology. I'm a rube. I know nothing about it. So it might be funny to watch an absolute moron and an absolute expert watch these together. And I was telling Jacob that I had this idea, and he's doing me a favor by bringing it up here.
You should. You should do that. It would be great.
Thank you.
So we're getting close to time, but we didn't really talk about. So we all watched the movie.
Yes.
And we don't have to go into detail about it really, but I will say it certainly was a movie.
Yes.
It was. I think it was pretty faithful considering.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot of parts I think that were very faithful. I think there were some things added that weren't needed. They added a whole other character, and now after reading this, I'm like, you really didn't need it. I think it actually takes away from really you could have taken your time exploring the story, and instead of being distracted by this this scientist woman turned witch out of nowhere / love interest for some reason.
I do think the whole thing on the train does make more sense for a movie, because then it at least explains why he's there. When the alternative is like a voiceover saying, "One day Hellboy was in Virginia when."
So people wouldn't tolerate the way it works in the comics. The way it works in the
No.
comics is Hellboy's been fighting vampires in Mexico, and he's lost a bunch of friends fighting vampires in Mexico, and he's literally walking back home from Mexico, and he walks through Virginia to get back home. That's how he ends up in the town, right? As opposed to the movie where they're on a train and a giant spider monster crashes.
Yeah. I don't know. I could have watched like a 15-minute summary of Hellboy in Mexico at the very front of the movie.
Same.
And then like that would have been a cool, like, here's all of the stuff that happened in Mexico. And then just like, all right. And then kind of ramp back up with the siege of the church. That could have been cool.
Or even if you did like a opening, it's just comic panels kind of leading into it. I think that would have been really cool.
The one thing that annoys me a lot that the major change they made is the end. At the end, there is a big, gigantic climactic showdown in the mansion where like our hero's faith is tested and whatever. And I actually like a lot more the anticlimactic. We walk into the house and there's this pitiable, nasty, deformed creature, and we just it's pity that defeats the creature, right? That has like a real philosophical and moral weight to it if you sit with it. And I think it cheapens it to replace it with a CGI action fest. That's not even very well done.
And I can see why they didn't, because I think if you brought that to any like producer, they'd be like, no, that shit's boring. Which I don't think it is, but I can see where they would be like, no, you have to have that. You can't just have the audience show up and like leave. This is an A24 film. We can't just do that. Yeah. But maybe that's how they. I mean, they probably should have shot it differently, I think. But you're not missing out, I think, is what I would say.
I didn't mind it. I didn't love it or hate it. It was fine.
So it's not doing too well among critics. Audience scores are somewhat mixed. I will tell you that over on Reddit, on the Hellboy subreddit r/Hellboy, they love this fucking flick. They think it's the best one so far. They think it's the most faithful to the comics. They think it nails the visuals and the atmosphere. They like that the scale is more contained than the other Hellboy movie scales have been. And a lot of these sort
and that's accurate for sure.
Are accurate, but I think there are like glaring issues with it that like override some of those praises for me. And I'll also tell you that my parents watched it because they have access to my my Amazon. My parents went and watched it, and they loved it. It's my mom's favorite of all the Hellboy movies.
Really?
Yeah. She loves it.
Well, I think you should all go see Your Monster in theaters instead. That's my recommendation. It has nothing to do with this. Everyone should go see that instead. Because I'm gonna go see it 3 more times. This is my plan, and then own it, and then watch it every day until I'm dead.
I haven't even heard of this.
Well, it's monster romantic comedy, but not a romantic comedy.
Excellent.
Where she gets dumped and there's a monster living in her house, kind of like Beauty and the Beast sort of deal.
Okay.
And then she's learning how to like reuse her like rage and get rid of her people pleasing.
Excellent.
And maybe it gets violent. I don't know. Maybe there's a musical number. I don't know. It's the best movie ever, I think. Anyways. So we're supposed to give a rating. This is the requirement of old reader, new reader. Unfortunately or unfortunately, out of 10.
Yeah.
So, and it's important because then James has to put it in the Excel sheet. So of the Crooked Man. Yeah.
Okay.
I can go first if you want.
Yeah.
I really, really like it. I think it does exactly what it should do. I in my mind and my heart, I want to say an 8.5 out of 10. Yeah. I really like it.
Yeah. So for me, it sits at a solid 8. Because I do love it. I like that it has like heavy notes of authenticity in it. The art is great. I think it drags on a little bit because even Mignola admits that he didn't have like a plot outline or an idea for a story when he put it together. So it meanders a little bit for me. And there's actually a bit where they show the witches who lived in the mines, and the art around the witches
we
who live in the
didn't
mines
talk
is
about
bad.
that.
It is extraordinarily like insensitive and like from another time in a bad way. So those things, as well as a little bit of the caricatures of the way people in Appalachia are portrayed, that sort of pushes it down for me. But there is enough here for the authenticity, and there's enough here with the art and the philosophy that like puts it like up in some of my favorite Hellboy stories for sure.
Crooked Man's a 9.4 easily. From I know it says Harvey Picar's ghost, but is this Cycle Cleveland actually? Is that who the real person is behind that in the chat? Yeah, I really do like this a lot.
Yeah. I'm gonna agree that it's about an 8, maybe an 8.5. I tried to think about what my favorite Hellboy story would be.
Oh yeah,
and I'm not sure. The vibe of Hellboy is very, very good.
Yeah.
But I don't know what bit of Hellboy would be the best. But yeah.
There's another one. It's a ghost story set in Kentucky where Hellboy is on a hot date with like a blonde chick, and they're in a red Corvette. That one's pretty good. But I think Hellboy in Mexico is actually my favorite. I really like the Hellboy in Mexico storyline.
I think we should do, if you want to come on again, Jake, because I love to have you, especially when my internet's not being stupid. Because I've had to restart my computer 5 times since I've been in this call. Because I can't end the show if I don't. I'd love to have you both on and do a Jeff Lemire book. Because I feel like this is the perfect crew for like one of Jeff Lemire's like self-contained. So like not oh gosh, it's
Sweet
gone.
Tooth?
Oh yeah, like I like Sweet Tooth, but I think one of his shorter ones.
Yeah.
Oh, I've read Essex County.
Oh, good. That's a great one.
I don't remember if I've read that one or not.
I wouldn't say May's book. I think that's too fresh. I think one of his other ones would be really good.
Did he do Madman? No.
But he did do. Oh man, Animal Man would be a good one to talk about. So that's actually like one of the big two. The New 52 run on Animal Man is so cool. I was just talking about it today, in on a Fangirls video. Like, oh man, it's all kind of like, he's like the antithesis of Swamp Thing. So he deals with like what we call the red in the DC universe. So like blood and living things, and it's very kind of like, it's very neat. Or maybe some Black Hammer, because that'd be a cool one too. It's like superheroes. But I'd love to have you all on again.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So thank you guys for you. Normally I'd have more chat time, but I'm so scared of my internet. I don't know what's happening. Oh man, Megan Thee Stallion cosplayed Starfire. I will be looking that up, James. Thank you. I haven't scheduled any November yet, chat. I'll be figuring that out sometime this week. If you have any recommendations for books to talk about, let me know. I'm also going to, next time when I send Hellboy back to you, Jacob, I'm going to send this book with Elliot for you to read, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I need you both to read it. It's Richard Scarry, if you ever watched those cartoons growing up, meets Dexter.
Oh.
Phenomenal. I need to make a Build-A-Bear with this bear and her like bloody apron and like a knife because I think she's just the sweetest serial killer I've ever seen. I love her. You've got to read it.
Did you ever read Scud?
No. Oh yeah. Oh, you mentioned that, right?
Yeah, we talked about it. I think you might have saw it on my bookshelf at one point, and we talked about
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah. Oh, we should do that then.
All right.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you both so much for being here. I love to have you on again, and I hope everybody's has a good spooky time. And don't leave once I say I'm ending the stream because you'll still be here and I'll still be here. It'll just end the broadcast. So stay so I can properly thank you. Chat, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Let us know your thoughts on Crooked Man or any like Hellboy recommendations, or if you watch the movie, come back and let us know. I'll be back tomorrow at 8 on Reels Talk with Amanda to talk about Uzumaki, which unfortunately failed horribly. Super bummed about it. So come and join us and talk about that. And I'll be back here, of course, next week with something. So hope you guys have a good night, and we'll see you all next time.
Good night.
Bye.